even we, don't we struggle sometimes to articulate what we are thinking, to put into sentences our feelings?
Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, the podcast for conscious parents, caregivers, and educators who believe tantrums aren't terrible. They are powerful opportunities for connection, growth, and learning during the first 5 years. You'll explore how to use intentional language to raise calm, confident, and deeply connected kids, because the way we talk to kids becomes how they see themselves and engage with the world. Hi, I'm your host, Cara Terrell, classroom teacher turned parent educator and teacher trainer. Are you ready to nurture your children's mind, body, and spirit? Welcome, Toddler Tribe. Let's transform the toddler years together. Welcome back, Toddler Tribe. Have you ever looked at one of your little one's doodles or drawings and wondered, what does this even mean? My guest today is here to help you figure it out. Dr. Josephine Deguara is joining us all the way from Malta, where she is a senior lecturer in early childhood and primary education at the university. And her research that she's bringing us today is through her new book. It's called Children Making Meaning, exploring drawings, narratives, and identities. It is such a fascinating study of how their little brains, bodies, hearts, and identities are developing. And since they have limited language, which we talk about all the time, they can share that with you through drawings. So get ready, get your crayons, get your markers, get your paper, grab your kid's most recent drawing, and enjoy this episode. Dr. Josephine, thank you so much for being here today, a literal world away, to share with us your groundbreaking research and the exciting narratives that are coming out in your book.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for having me.
Of course. So as I was saying before we hit record, our work really dovetails. Your expertise is in how kids communicate meaning-based information through drawing. And I work on kind of the other side of that, how adults can get really communicative, meaning-based information that's authentic from kids by the words we choose to say to them. So I am so excited to explore how this idea of drawing and imagery is really one of their first languages.
Yeah. In fact, as we know, children from a very young age, younger than 1 year old, they start doing marks on paper. Initially, it might be that probably it is more than an exploration of both the crayon and the paper and what they can do with them and the effect of their movement on paper. But soon after, they start attributing meaning to what they are drawing. And once they are able to verbalize words and we are able to communicate with them, you understand that, yes, their drawings carry meaning. So because it is a mode which children acquire before they talk, and of course before they start writing, I consider it as a child-friendly mode. They feel comfortable at it, well, at least most children do. It's not threatening for them, and they are very open, so they feel so much at ease that basically they are able to bring out what they are thinking, what they are feeling, what they know, everything that they are going through.
I totally agree with you. So I'm curious your take on this. When I see a child creating something on paper, regardless of their age, regardless of whether it has actual representational shapes that align with what we would expect to see, I am very careful not to assign meaning to what I'm looking at. How do you, because you've done all this research, you've looked at it from both ways. What happens when we do assign meaning and say, oh, that's a beautiful snowman, when ultimately what they were drawing was 3 different versions of the plate of food they had for dinner last night. Right? What happens when we do that?
Yeah, I agree totally with you that we should resist the temptation of interpreting children's drawings, because basically when we do, we tend to get it wrong most frequently. However, the more we know the child, the more we are able to understand what they are drawing. However, so it is important to know the child and to know the context of the child, but definitely we need to get into dialogue with children. And initially, if children are not so much used to having an adult really interested in their drawing, because like you said, when we say, well done, it's beautiful, wow, we are dismissing the drawing basically. But when children see that we are interested in what they are drawing, and we ask questions, open-ended questions like, okay, what is this? What is happening here? What happened next? How are you feeling here? Or how are you feeling about the drawing? We are making them think. We are showing them that we appreciate what they are drawing. They then invest more time in what they are drawing, and you start seeing that in very few weeks, their drawings become much more complex in meaning, in interpretation. And actually, you realize that even the young children, as young as 4 years old, they are able to even use metaphors in their drawings to communicate what they are saying. And it's amazing in the sense of they sometimes communicate things which all of us, even as adults, still struggle and try to make sense of, like issues of power, like issues of love, good and evil, their identity. So I see that the more we give value to children by listening to them, by asking them questions, of course, like you said, not saying, oh, what a beautiful snowman. It has to be more open-ended. What is this, or what you have drawn here, or what did you draw? Because then children start thinking more in depth and communicating much more layered, deep meanings in their drawings. And you eventually get to know the child much more. I had parents saying, oh, I didn't know that about my child. So both teachers and or educators and parents, through their drawings, through children's drawings, you get to know your child better, much more in depth. And I think it is also a process for the child, because in the process, the child starts understanding their identity better, who they are better, their position in the family, or their group dynamics, or who they are. So it becomes such a complex actual thing.
You're spot on. And you're bringing me way back. I think I've told this story before on the show, but it's been years, to when our family was growing. And our first daughter, Emma Grace, was born still at 40 weeks and 1 day.
Yes.
Her sisters came 3 and then 2 years later. And when Claire, our second born, went to kindergarten, our household was an inclusive household. We had 3 kids, just one didn't happen to live here in the flesh. So we talked about her all the time. We included her all the time. We wondered about her all the time. And we made sure the girls knew that they were equally loved and had different identities from the sister who couldn't stay. So Claire goes to kindergarten and they say, draw us a family portrait. Right? So this is not a free draw. You and I were just discussing like just some paper and crayons hanging around and kids communicating meaning-based information through whatever their creative brains were thinking in that moment. This was a focused, directed draw. And she drew me and my husband and her little sister and our animals and her sister in heaven. And it was a challenging drawing for this teacher to handle, because it was a very clear, authentic identity statement that Claire had no trouble with. This is just who I am. This is who my family is. But it didn't really fit with the kindergarten paradigm in that moment. So what do you recommend when you're working with parents or you're consulting with teachers as far as directed drawing versus just open-ended free draw?
While I see the value of directed drawing, especially in the classroom, because I was a teacher myself, so I understand that, and I understand the need to provide a context, even in the class, about what you are teaching and doing in class. So I see the value in that. But when it comes to free drawing, literally children talk through their drawing. They talk about what they are going through at that moment in time, what is important for them that day. So, for example, if I can bring an anecdote about one of the drawings. One day, so I was doing this study with 3 4-year-old children, and I had a very good relationship with them. I had been in class for several weeks, and I saw this guy who usually was very outspoken and happy, and he came to class really angry and sulking, and I tried to speak with him, and he ignored me. I tried to invite him to the drawing paper, and he ignored me. And I observed him throughout the morning for some 2 hours. He was really angry throughout. But then at one point, he came to the table, to the drawing table, and he told me, "Can I draw it?" I told him, "Of course, you can." And he drew a picture of his mother, and he tied her to a chair. And I said, "Okay, so what's happening here?" And he told me, "I am very angry at my mother because this morning she didn't give me any sweets because he had a sweet tooth." And this was kind of an ongoing discussion between him and his mother about how many sweets he could take. And it was still more early in the morning. And so he was so angry that he tied his mother. I mean, he was a very normal child, but he tied his mother to the chair. And I kind of felt that his mother was partially right, and I spoke with the child, and I told him, "Don't you think your mother is right in not giving you sweets so early in the morning?" And he told me, "Well, one sweet wouldn't have done any harm." But what was important that after the drawing, the child calmed down. He wasn't angry anymore. He related with his peers, with his friends. Normally, he was happy again. So in that case, he used the drawing as a cathartic effect. He used it to get out his anger. He communicated his anger, and he was okay later. But he needed that. He needed to kind of get it out of his system. So later I wondered, what if the child didn't have that opportunity to draw? Of course, I must say here that he had a wonderful relationship with his mother. He loved his mother. He was his mother's pet. So, but it was a way for him to communicate what he was going through. And listening to you also, to your description of the drawing of your daughter, the cover of the book actually, which I published with Catinat Brown, kind of your narrative reminded me, your story reminded me of the drawing of the cover of the book, because the child Thea, who was 4 years old at the time, she drew herself what she called the drawing Erica and Mom, and Erica was her sister, before I was born. And she drew her sister, she drew her mother, and then she drew herself in a circle at the bottom of the page with her own son and her own kind of grassland, that children draw the grass at the bottom. So she was kind of in her world with her mother and sister, but at the same time separated from them. So she was trying to kind of understand how life was before she was born. She was with them, but at the same time separate from them. And it's very interesting to see how children understand all these dynamics, and also these temporal kind of time-bounding events in their lives. And it's amazing, how they are able to communicate that then through drawing. Because if you ask the child something like that verbally, I don't think that they would be able to do that alone through verbal language. But with the help of the drawing, and because while they are drawing, they are able to think about what they are drawing and what does that mean to them, then the verbalization becomes easier.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, Toddler Tribe, Cara here with a couple of very exciting updates. First, have you noticed? My handle has changed online. That's right, on Instagram and now on my brand new TikTok channel. It's at Cara Talks Toddler, because that's what we do here, is learn how to choose our words to connect deeply with the littles who know, love, and trust us. Speaking of that, I have lovingly called you my toddler tribe for 3 years. So I'm thrilled to announce that we are launching a community just for you. It's time for us to see each other face to virtual face, hear each other in live time so that we can really connect deeply and help each other through those challenging and celebratory moments that is toddlerhood. So I would love for you to do 2 things. First, make sure you're on the mailing list. All you have to do is go to caraterrell.com, fill out the small form, and the Core 4 connector will drop into your inbox every Monday at 11 in the morning. When you're on the list, you'll be the first to know when the doors are wide open to our toddler tribe. Secondly, and this might even be more important, if you have an idea of how the tribe would feel most comforting, most connected, and most valuable to you, DM me. Send me a message on Instagram or TikTok. Tell me what you need so we can build this just for you. It's really fascinating. And you're right. I mean, you have a doctorate in philosophy, right? Like you are able to look at things from all the different perspectives and angles, which there's just so many layers. And as a child's growing brain, those first 5 years of life is hitting so many synapses per second. Yeah. They can bounce all over the place, right? So they can do this metaphorical drawing and we can read something into it or not. They can do this creative abstract concept. But what I loved about this little boy's tying his mother to the chair is that I feel like it represented visually for him the boundary. Right. And that is essentially what a 4-year-old is bumping up against. My mother is giving me a boundary. I'm not a fan of the boundary, but knowing that they recognize it for what it is and that it's being held with love and empathy and was able to process it. So this is really fascinating stuff because, you don't have to be an art therapist in order to say to a child who is showing extreme emotional dysregulation, which is what our classrooms here in the United States are full of right now. Would you like to say it to me or draw it to me? Right? Those are beautiful choices because some kids are very verbal. Some kids are happy to spin you a story, but others really need a safer way to express. And this is just beautiful work.
Yeah, thank you. And while you are talking, I also remember that when children are drawing, sometimes it's not only drawing. Sometimes they accompany their drawing process with vocalizations, with partial narratives, with even movements. Sometimes I had children standing up and going around the room to express that drawing means. I remember a drawing by one of the children, the same boy, who drew Father Christmas, or rather himself, with a bag full of candy again. And he was going around like the Father Christmas bag, going around the class. And he literally, to explain that, he stood up on his chair, went down, marching around. So it's kind of, that's why then I tap into multimodality, because it's not one mode, it's multiple modes.
Yes.
It's also the facial expressions, it's also the silences, it's also the hesitations, it's also the crossing off or changing or rubbing off, it's the movement, it's the gestures. So actually it's a multimodal way, and therefore, and it's amazing because when children don't get where they want to get or communicate what they want to communicate via the drawing and the verbals, then they use the other modes to support their message, basically.
And this is why I said our work dovetails so beautifully. So you have this extraordinary book. It's called Children Making Meaning, Exploring Drawing, Narratives, and Identities. And I so love that last word. And I have a book as well. And my book is called Talk to Them Early and Often. And it's an intentional language guide for caregivers, parents, and educators. And I introduce a framework called the Talking Triangle. And in that talking triangle, affect, like the energy that you bring to the interaction, your facial expressions, your body language, and your tone, whether or not you are actually speaking, convey 93% of your meaning, and words are only 7%. So I'm sure you're familiar with the science behind that and the research. And so this has been a big aha moment for many people who have read the book, and they say, I am an adult who really relies on words, and I tell kids, use your words. But really, they have very few to begin with at that young age, and they don't know how to put them together in a way to convey what they are deeply thinking and feeling. So I love how you're pulling out all of those pieces as well, and the way that multimodally we communicate essentially just as human beings.
Yeah, and I think it is very important for children because they very desperately want to communicate with us. If only we can listen, if only we can understand their languages. So yes, children need to find their ways to articulate their thoughts, but even don't we struggle sometimes to articulate what we are thinking, to put into sentences our feelings?
Yes.
Let alone children who are still trying to make sense of words and of the world around them and of who they are. So I think, and I desperately, I very much believe that drawing is a mode which children can, if we allow them, can help them to articulate what they want to say. And like I said before, for parents and for educators, it's a way to get to know the child and also to get to know what they are going through or feeling at that moment in time. And also, in our book, we suggest the book also to psychologists. Yes, this is not play therapy, but art therapy. But art therapists can latch onto this book. Because like the example I mentioned of the boy tying his mother, he used the drawing process as a cathartic effect. And also all the drawings that children drew, they are like snapshots of their daily lives. I mean, it can be a simple drawing, if we would like to call it like that, of a time in their day. Like, for example, one of the children drew himself and his mother and his daughter on their way back home from school in the car. So the father was not there because at that time it's a mother and children thing. So it's just a snapshot of their life. But then you can also get more complex things. Like, for example, children communicate with emotions such as, for example, that they are scared. I had Thea, the same girl who drew her family portrait, drawing a picture where she drew a tiny little witch at the bottom of the drawing. And there was nothing else in the drawing. But when I asked her, she told me that she was very much scared of witches, to the extent that she was having nightmares. They disposed of all DVDs of fairy tales with witches. But it was something very real. If I had said, "Oh, it's a witch," okay, that's fine. Without asking about it, I wouldn't have known how difficult it was for her and how scared she was of witches. And something else is that sometimes we need to value what children are, or actually value their feelings, in the sense of, it's not good to dismiss the child or say, "Oh, witches don't exist," because for her, it was very real. Fantasy for children, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, they are still see it as sometimes real life. They start to making distinctions. So being scared of a witch was very real for her. So we need to appreciate their feelings. And for example, Luke, the same child who drew he drew the drawing of where he tied his mother to the chair. He drew a family episode where they went to a local castle over here, and this castle, there was this narrative of that there was this blue lady who was a ghost in this castle. It's like a national castle over here, and they saw a video of this blue lady, and his younger brother, who was like 2-3 years old, was very scared of this blue lady. And in his drawing, Luke drew his family, and he drew himself as the hero of his family, where he tied and killed this blue lady. So again, drawings can serve as a way for children to process their emotions, in this case their fears, and also to find solutions for what they are feeling.
I am. Something that I've been thinking a lot about lately is the idea that globally, we are raising consumers and not creators. And that comes down to the creative process that starts early on. If 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds have these creative supplies around them at home and in their programs, and they are encouraged to use them in certain moments, and also just given that space, silence, and freedom to just have that creative burst and want to get it out, then we are raising creators. And consumers, their brain is so filled with the media that we are putting in and the screens and all that, learning that the ability to kind of disengage and turn on that creative mode is disappearing. And what you are talking about is kind of high level creation, right? Not just, I'm going to take this red crayon and make some squiggles on a paper, but I'm going to represent something that's happening in my brain and in my heart and in my mind on a paper. And I think kids need to practice that with low stakes creative moments.
Yeah, you mentioned something very important, creating this space and having the resources accessible for children. That is crucial. Initially, we might need to sit with them and kind of get them started, especially if they are so much used to screens and they are not used to draw. And I find it that by time children kind of lose that interest and the ability to communicate through language, the older they become, you find it less and less that children feel at ease with drawing. So it is important, yes, very much important to have the space and give children the time and the resources so that when they feel like it, they can go there and have that time to communicate, to draw, to just be themselves and express themselves. Yes, I've been in classes where I've observed children, like you said, that they were not engaged in what they were doing. They were simply asked to draw something, and they just draw without being engaged at all. And yes, when children then start to understand that drawing can be used as a language, they engage, they are motivated, they are engaged, and they feed or rather see the relevance of drawings in helping them to process things and communicate, because they realize that drawings are meaningful. They are meaningful for them and for the adults if we spend time with them, sit with them and listen to them. And you also talked about high-level creation. And I totally agree with that because drawings are fluid. Like when we are writing something, we plan, we write, we change our writing. That's the same happens with children. They continuously revise, edit, add. Sometimes they give meaning to the same object, different meanings to the same object. So drawing is very fluid. It is a conversation not only between the child and the adult, but between the child and the drawing and also the materials. So it's a continuous conversation. It's also drawing is a narrative for the child. Like I was saying, that it allows them, it permits, it helps them, it facilitates telling stories of joy, of loss, of fear, and of hope, of wishes. And it is also a way, we have talked about this, of children showing who they are becoming, who they were, and who they wish to be. So, and this is something which I really found as very strong in children's drawing. So they draw themselves in the past, who I was. So me before I was born, in my mommy's belly, and it wasn't only Thea who drew that. In the future, who I might become, like my father, a captain of a ship, a pilot of a plane. In fantasy characters, like how I can change, like I mentioned, superheroes who pulls all bad people in jail, and also in the present, who am I now? Yeah. This is me. This is how I'm feeling. So it's very complex. And also, I refer to this as well, that drawing is dynamic. It is shaped not only by the crayon and the child's thought, but by movement, by silence, by gesture. And therefore, I consider drawings as a portal to children's inner views, to their thoughts, to how they see their world. So I truly believe that if we allow children to, or give children the time to draw, they don't only draw pictures, they draw themselves, their stories, their questions, their dreams. So they really put their whole being in the drawing.
Yeah. I love how you describe this as a fluid evolution, right? I started journaling at the beginning of the year, and I'm becoming more comfortable with it because it's becoming more fluid, because it's evolving since I do it mostly every day. But I've got to say, as a former teacher, I remember and I was like this too, but I remember parents being like, the project is done, right? That there was a product that the kid was attempting to achieve, as opposed to a process that they were following their intuition and their thought patterns and their memories. And this one little boy, every time, I mean, it was just fascinating to watch. He would get all the different materials and he would try this and do that. And he would color and he would cut and he would paste and he'd get it all put together. And then the adults were ready ready for it to be done. And he would either crush it, rip it, or throw it away every single time. And it was so hard to let him, like, it hurts your adult heart. You worked so hard on that. But for him, it wasn't done yet. That was his first attempt at getting out whatever he was trying to, and he was hard of hearing. So he had another layer to communication frustration and challenges. And so you've brought that memory back to me today where I was like, oh, I think I get it even more now, that every day he was attempting, but he never felt like he was quite done.
Yeah. And actually it happens frequently that when children say sometimes I'm finished and they start talking about the drawing, then at one point they tell you, wait, I have something else to add. So yes, it's a continuous process that makes children think. And I think that is another important factor, because frequently we kind of tell children all the time things they want to know and what they have to do, without allowing and giving them enough space and time to think. And actually, when they are drawing and then talking about it, they are thinking. And I think that is something that we need our children to do, to plan, to think, to revise, to engage mentally in what they are doing. And you mentioned the process over the product. For me, they are both important, but definitely the process, it's where things are happening. It's when the thinking is happening. It's where the communication is happening. And therefore, that's why I find it very important to record the process, to video record the process, and revisit that, because so many things happen during that time that one needs to capture them if it is possible. Because you see a lot of things happening there. And sometimes we might see a drawing which is all marks. I had one particular drawing which was literally all marks all over the place. But it was so layered with meaning, because the child first drew, it was an action drawing in the sense that he drew people fighting each other. So first there were images of people, but then there was all this action going on, which he marked with all lines and all the shooting, this shooting the other. That when you look at it as an end product, you only see lines. But when you are there or watching the video, you will see different layers of this. It was like a story being made. And sometimes I also compare children's drawings, especially when they are full of narratives and of action, like small word play, that the small word toys are talking and are full in action with each other. And the same thing is happening in the drawing. The difference is that in a drawing, things are 2D, whereas in small word play, they are 3D.
Right.
But there is still the same action, like I mentioned, vocalization, fighting movement from here to there. So it's so much laden with expression, creativity, action. So, yeah, there's so much engagement. And that's why it is important to capture the process, or if you cannot, to be there and see what is happening in the drawing, so that you can see the different layers, literally, because what children do sometimes, draw a layer and then things start happening over there. And if you are not there, like I said, you only see marks on the paper. Whereas if you are throughout the process, you see the whole story evolving. Yeah. And that's where you see creativity coming out, actually.
It's amazing. That's actually one of my favorite parts of your book, is that the imagery is there, right? Readers go through and then they see the drawings, and the drawings tell the story, and you and your co-author kind of untangle all of it. So that is just, I mean, it's such special work. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Malta to share your research and your hands-on work, and now this book that parents, educators, caregivers, and therapists can get their hands on. We will have the link to your book directly in the show notes. Once again, it's called Children Making Meaning, Exploring Drawing Narratives and Identities. I appreciate your time so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
All right, Toddler Tribe, you know what to do. But before I give you our call out, I'm going to give you a few more instructions. Get out your crayons and your washable markers, right? Get out the paper, create a space, just leave it. Don't say a word about it. Just make it appear in your children's world and watch the magic happen. All right, you know what to do. Stay mindful and proactive as we transform the toddler years.